Hey everyone, Scottish Warrior here, and welcome to the series review in which I pick a TV series and I review it episode by episode. In today's installment of the series review, I'm going to be reviewing episode 2 of Smallville. If you haven't seen my review of the pilot, annotations somewhere on my face or up at the corner or somewhere. You just click, should say EP1. Whatever. This was a wee bit, sorry for the delay on this. I was planning on having this out around about the same week I got episode 1 out, but of course scheduling problems and other wee bits of issues came across, and I do apologise also for the cover in the background. My back has been killing me for the past day or so, so I needed something soft to lean back on. But yeah, so let's dive right into this and let's go. Let's talk about episode 2. Let's talk about Smallville, season 1, episode 2, Metamorphosis. Of course, they had a previously on segment, which is kind of typical of Smallville for some of the early seasons, but and also the parts. But we'll skip all that. Let's see. Well, firstly, of course, before the main theme, because the main theme does make appearances, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We do get the the villain of the episode, who is, I call him Bug Boy, because he is not, he's a creepy motherfucker. There's no way to put it. Like, this is a problem that some of the earlier seasons had with Smallville, was a lot of their villains were creepy motherfuckers who you kind of were like, you know what, I hope you die. Those kind of things. And we're very introduced him. I cannot remember his name, I'm sorry. I think it's Greg. I could be wrong, but I'm surprised I didn't call him Creepy Crawley, because he was literally the borderline creep factor guy, which kind of bugged me a little bit. No pun intended. But he has also we learned he's a peeping Tom, and he's been peeping on Lana. That's also like instantaneous hate for that character. Of course, for that, of course. There's also the quite theme of comic book logic in this episode, in which a few things that you're like, yeah, this is the kind of, you can tell it's based in a comic book, but that's to be expected. So let's get to the theme. The theme is called, if memory serves me, Save Me by REM, which I'm going to be brutally honest here. When Smallville was first on, I didn't watch it. I didn't start watching Smallville till about season 4 or 5. And unfortunately, the theme was a major problem for me. I know a lot of people love it, but I just think it's an average theme. I think it suits the series if you stick with it, but the theme was one of the reasons why I didn't really watch it, because it's just kind of that generic save me theme, like please beg dear God help and save me Superman. That kind of bugged me a little bit, but the theme did grow on me after I started watching a lot more episodes, and I grew to like it, I grew to enjoy it. Anytime it's on, I do end up singing along with it. It's an average theme in my opinion. It's not the greatest theme I've ever heard, and it's licensed music, so that's always a lot of issue I've got with TV series when they do license music, but that's how they make a good bit of money. But overall, the theme does fit the series quite well, because it is a Superman it is a series based on Superman, but Clark Kent, so the theme does suit. It's a bit iffy still for me. It does get annoying. It's one of the few themes that I could skip, but occasionally I will listen to the full thing. But overall, the theme's average. It does grow on you. It does take a few episodes, if I'm going to be honest, before I got into it. I normally was just like, fucking move it. But after like 4 or 5 episodes, I was like, somebody save me. It does get in you. It's an average theme. I have listened also to the full song, and the full song is actually really good. But I really hate themes that are kind of like the generic hero themes, which is kind of what Save Me is, and it's okay, it's not bad, it isn't the worst one I've ever heard, trust me, there are a lot worse ones out there, but I think it's a decent theme and very average. But of course, let's skip to the theme, because I spent like 2 minutes about talking about it, and let's go to the episode. As the same for the last episode, I have about 2 pages of notes. I'm not going to tell you every single thing, because when I watch a series and I write notes on these stupidest fucking things. One of the major things that they did in this, the overall, I can't really pick a theme for this episode beyond the fact that Clark is a superhero. I'm sorry, that's the word. That he's the noble guy, that even though he does have ambitions, he still is one of those guys that would like the Boy Scout, even gets called the Boy Scout in episode 1 and episode 2, I believe, which, of course, is the Superman thing. In fact, he even gets called Superman at one point. Just to make sure you know, he's Superman. Near enough, right at the start of the episode, we get the daydream of Clark flying, where he's hovering above Lana's bed, and you're just like, this is creepy. And it's a dream sequence, so it's okay. He's like, and then he's hovering above his bed, and he's like, I floated. And yeah, of course, Martha and Jonathan, being the parents with the boy who has superpowers, are like, okay, now we're kind of fucked. Yeah, I know, it's just... we get to see him use a lot more of his powers, his standard ones, you know, super strength and vulnerability, things like that. We get to see that, that's very nice. And also, more emphasis on his weakness, which is the green rock, which hasn't been called kryptonite yet, but we know it's fucking kryptonite, it's Superman. Lex, of course, is also quite prominent in this episode. He's there, but he's sort of like, he's there, and he does have a good partner with trying to push Clark to go, you know what, why don't you go for fucking Lana? Why don't you go for her, for fuck's sake? He's sort of like that friend who's like, go for it, do it, and then he's like, he's not fucking doing it, isn't he? You know what, I'm gonna, let me nudge him a little bit. He's sort of like the friend who does stuff for you to get you to do the thing you would never do, but even then Clark doesn't do it, which is nice, because one of the main things in this episode which he does, he's trying to get Clark to use Lana's necklace to win her affection, basically, but he's tempted. Clark is very tempted. He is a teenager, of course, so he is tempted to do it, and it does show his temptation, but of course he doesn't do it because he's the Boy Scout, which is another reason why I don't like Superman that much, but it works for this episode. I think any other good points. I'm talking about good points. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. But Lex is also brilliant in it. Lex is brilliant in this episode. He helps him, of course, throughout. He talks to Lana and all that. I'm trying to think of anything else. Lex does a little test with Clark, I think, like when he first shows him Lana's necklace in the lead-lined box. And you can tell that's Lex Luthor in a nutshell. Like, he literally is very suspicious of Clark, and he does open the box, and you can tell he's testing him because he sees the reaction on Clark's face, and he's studying it, and he's like, interesting, and then closes the box. You can tell that just by the look at his face, and the actor who plays Lex does a fantastic job. I'm so sorry I've forgotten his name. I am horrible with names. I do apologise for that. There's a couple of superhero puns here and there, which of course Boy Scout, which really bugs me, but it's okay. There's also one other prominent thing which I liked in this episode, which is Clark. Tom Welling does a fantastic job of expressing how Clark feels guilty. He actually blames himself for the death of Lana's parents because of the meteor storm that brought him there, and you can see the guilt in his face and how he feels guilty about that he caused so much pain and suffering, even though he didn't really do it. Even Jonathan says to him and sits down and goes, you had no fucking control over that. Get over it. In a more friendly parent kind of way. I would just be like, slap across the face, break my hand and go, let me do. But you can tell that Clark does feel guilty for that, and it is quite a thing that's featured in quite a few of the episodes in the early seasons. He feels guilty for what he's done, and he's kind of a bit of a... He's like, I blame myself, even though he doesn't have to, and he shouldn't have to. Chloe's in this episode well, but she's only in it for a few seconds, but in those few seconds, well, a minute or two max. In that time, it's instantly put across that she's got a crush on Clark. I never noticed it first time watching this episode all those ages ago, but now that I've watched it and analysing it, I'm like, I do apologise, it's coming up for Guy Fawkes Night and there are fireworks going out on there. I do apologise if you can hear it. But it's quite hinted right in your face that she's got a crush on Clark, and Clark is, of course, too fucking blind to see it. Also, how Chloe thinks is also quite nice, like how her intelligence is, which works really well. We get Clark's heroic instinct as well, is also quite cool. Like, as soon as he knows that Lana's in trouble, done like that. He instantly doesn't even think about it. He literally goes to help. He also helps his dad as well, who almost helps Jonathan, who's almost killed by the villain of the episode, whose name I can think it's Greg. I'm not 100% certain. We also get the problem thing of lead in this episode as well, which is nice. They did introduce that factor that kryptonite can't penetrate lead, which is understandable. It works really well. So they did get that. There was no Deus Ex Machina in this episode that I could tell. So lead is introduced very early on in the episode, and is also playing fad in how he beats the villain, which is nice. trying to think what else. Lana is also really good, and also Whitney. Whitney, Lana's boyfriend, is in episode 1 he was a jerk. In episode 2 he's still a jerk, but you can see the hints of heroism in his actions. Like, he didn't even think for a second to do. He does do some one or two wee nice things here. He does steal the limelight away from Clark, saving Lana, but it works well, and you can see that even though Whitney's a jerk, he does have good characteristics to him, and he does have a slight hint of hero to him, and he will help out if he needs to. So let's talk about a couple of the bad things that I didn't like. A couple of the things I did not like in this episode. One of the major things I really hated in this episode was the villain. Like, the villain in this episode is, I could be wrong, I don't think it's Greg, but I'm going to call him Greg. He is the stereotypical, as I said, creepy motherfucker. He peeps on Lana. He literally is the guy who you try and avoid, who literally you don't want to go anywhere near, because he's that creepy. And what powers did he get from the kryptonite infected bugs? Because he collects bugs, of course. He gets bug powers. I just half expect him to spin out a web. And he's creepy. He's creepy beyond belief. I know that's how they're trying to walk it, but it really, really bugs me, no pun intended, with these type of villains that are, you're meant to hate them. You're meant to hate this guy. You're meant to want him dead. And I really don't like those villains most of the time. They have to be done right for me to like them. But he is a good villain for this, I will admit. He just kind of, there was also the standard cliche of the bug puns. There were too many bug puns in this episode. It's just minor nitpicks, these. He talks about bugs. He says about the feral spider, the ants, these things, that, and so many bug puns. It started driving me nuts. There were one or two superhero puns as well with Clark, but it wasn't as much as the bug puns. The bug puns really, really annoyed the hell out of me. I don't think, is there anything else? No, there's not much else. I say the main problem with this episode was the villain. He wasn't the worst I've ever seen, but he was kind of annoying in instances. He's creepy crawly, that's why they ended up dubbed him. And that's another thing that really bugged me. That he just was not done right, in my opinion. He was done okay, they knew what they were doing, but they just didn't capitalise on it. I think they could have done a wee bit more with him and making him less of a creepy motherfucker. But final thoughts on the episode. The episode is average. It's an average episode. It suffers from a lot of the problems that are apparent through the first 3 or 4 seasons of Smallville, in which it gets too comic booky and too punny and too cliche, I want to say. But it doesn't suffer from a lot of the other episodes. There are plenty of other worse episodes in the first season. But overall, it's an average episode. Definitely one of the episodes that you can kind of miss this episode, but if you watch it, you'll get some backstory. There's some key scenes in this episode, but it does have a wee bit of feeling of filler on it. For me personally, which I don't think should be a major point of a second episode of a season. A second episode of a season should follow up from the pilot and explain a lot more. And they do explain a lot more. Like, as I said, they explain Lead. They flush out Lex's character a wee bit more. They get the Chloe and Clark shippers all set up within like 5 minutes. They set that up in the first episode, but that's beside the point. They get Lana and Whitney across really well. They get across the fact that the meteor rocks give powers, which I will get to when we get to the point within the season where they start talking about that, because I want to save that because I do have a lot to say on that. But as I say, it's definitely not the worst episode in the entire series, but it definitely isn't the best. It's an average episode. It's definitely suffers from a lot of the faults that I think the first few seasons suffered, and probably why I didn't get into them as much as other people did. But as I say, it's sort of like one of those ones that you can miss, but if you miss it, you'll probably miss it 1 or 2 key scenes. But it's still kind of filler, in my opinion. But I think that's about it. Let me know what your thoughts are on the second episode of Smallville, and if you want to help me with the third episode, which is the next one, you can go and watch it. Go watch it, whatever means you want to watch it. If you own the DVD, watch it. If you have Netflix, I think it's on Netflix. I don't think it is. Or by other means, I'm not promoting it. I'd love to know your input down below in the comment section down below. What did you think of episode 2 of Smallville, if you can remember it, or if you've recently watched it? As I said, I've given my review, and hopefully episode 3 of Smallville will be a bit of an improvement. So, as always, I'm Scottish Warrior 82, and thank you for watching. I'll see you all later. Ciao for now. Mwah.